It has now been 2 years since Xenoblade Chronicles 3 released on the Nintendo Switch, and in these 2 years, my opinion has remained the same. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is my favorite RPG of all time. It was my game of the year for 2022. It's one of the top 5 best games that Nintendo has released this generation. It's one of the best games that they've ever released, and it's one of the most emotionally impactful games that I've ever played. Hello everyone, Justin here, and welcome to Just Keep Playing. Thank you for joining me as we take a look back and reflect on Xenoblade Chronicles 3 2 years later. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is my favorite RPG, and the Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy is my favorite RPG series today, but I wasn't always so big on the series. When the first game originally came out, I wasn't as all in on RPGs as I am now. I liked the genre and I had a few favorites here and there, but I wasn't all in like I am now. So I was aware of the game, but didn't really pay it too much thought, and I just wasn't looking to sink 60 to 100 hours into a game at the time. So when the Switch came out, that was when I really started to fall in love with RPGs, with it becoming one of my favorite type of games to play. When Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out, I thought that it looked really cool and I was really interested in it, but it also looked like it was a little bit more complicated than I wanted to get into at the time. But when Xenoblade Chronicles 2 story expansion, Torna and the Golden Country came out, its more streamlined system appealed to me, and the fact that it was a prequel story to 2 convinced me to give that game a try. So I played it on the plane on the way back home from Christmas that year, and I really loved what I played, but for whatever reason, I didn't stick with it, and it found its way into my backlog for a couple of years, but then something happened. COVID and worldwide lockdowns happened. Suddenly, I had a lot more time on my hands. Video games provided an escape for a lot of people during that time, and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was one of those games for me during that time. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition had me hooked from the very beginning. I absolutely loved that game. It was so good that it took me away from Final Fantasy VII Remake at the time. So after I finished Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, now I was ready to give Xenoblade Chronicles 2 a chance. I played and loved that one. So then I dug out Torna out of my backlog. I played through and loved that one. And now the Xenoblade Chronicles series had become 2 of my favorite games and one of my favorite RPG series. So when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced, I was very excited to dive back into that world, its gameplay mechanics, music, and story. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but the story is just so good. It's such a gripping and emotional tale with an endearing main cast. It was such a special moment back in 2022 when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 came out, when so many fans were playing through the game. Every few days or so on Twitter, as fans reach the end of a chapter, you see a different chapter from that game trending. I don't recall seeing that for too many games, if any, before or since then. That made for such an amazing and communal experience while playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3. There were so many times during my time with the game that a story moment would have me like, what is going on? It would leave me speechless, heart-wrenched, hyped, or just straight up wrecked. Throughout my many years of playing games, there haven't been many that have come close to bringing me to tears. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is definitely the game that's come the closest and hit me the hardest. Just listening to the song that plays at the end of the game still hits me in the feels. And at the end of the day, without great characters, the story wouldn't hit quite as hard. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3, to me, has a fantastic cast of characters, and the main party of characters is definitely one of my all-time favorites. I truly loved going on this adventure with Noah, Mio, Uni, and the gang. Are they as iconic as the cast from a game like, say, Final Fantasy VII? Maybe not, but I think that they'll stick with me just as much as that group over the coming years. Gameplay, story, and music are the three areas where the Xenoblade Chronicles series shines the most to me. We just talked about the story, but the gameplay, I absolutely love the gameplay and combat system in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. In my opinion, it's the best in the series, and especially in the Future Redeemed story expansion. To me, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has the perfect blend of incredibly fun gameplay and an amazing story. I had so much fun just running around and exploring this beautiful world that Monolith Soft has built for us, doing side quests and hero quests, and enjoying the combat while leveling up my characters and maxing out their classes. There were times where I would spend hours running around, leveling up classes and battling unique monsters and super bosses for one of those classes instead of progressing the story for that night's play session and regret absolutely nothing and have a blast while doing it. I loved trying out all of the different classes, mixing and matching, putting different builds together, fighting a much higher level enemy or super boss, getting my butt kicked, figuring out a different strategy, and then defeating that enemy or super boss. It was just so satisfying. I know the Xenoblade Chronicles and all of its systems can seem really complex and confusing, but I thought that they did a much better job in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 of easing you into all of the game's different systems little by little. The tutorials were much better this time around, and you could tell that Monolith Soft learned so much from the criticisms that they took for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, applied them here, and the game benefited tremendously because of it. I love how they did side quests in the game. I love how they did hero characters instead of the random gacha pulls from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and its core crystals. I could go on and on and on, but the gameplay in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is absolutely phenomenal, and it's one of my all-time favorite combat systems. The Xenoblade Chronicles series has some absolutely incredible music. The first two games' soundtracks are amazing with some extremely iconic songs. And it wasn't until I really got into those games and Fire Emblem Three Houses that I discovered how huge video game music had become over the years, and that there were people out there that have actually grown careers making covers of video game music. I've even been fortunate to have the opportunity to contribute to a few covers myself for Husky by the Geek and Studio Nintendo, two amazing musicians, and their channels are linked below. Needless to say, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 had a lot to live up to, and in my opinion, Yasunori Mitsuda, the lead for Xenoblade Chronicles 3's soundtrack, and his team absolutely knocked it out of the park. The menu themes, a banger. The battle themes, a banger. One of the songs that plays after a certain chapter provides a fitting emotional gut punch. Just an amazing soundtrack overall. I know that there is some criticism with not being able to turn off the theme that plays when you do chain attacks, but I love that song too. The Xenoblade series has some of the best music in all of gaming, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 more than lived up to that standard. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is an absolutely incredible game and experience. It's one of my favorite games of all time and an absolute must-play on the Nintendo Switch. It has one of the best stories that I've ever experienced in a game, or any piece of media for that matter. During the nearly 3 months I spent playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I couldn't help but share my thoughts and feelings on the game with my wife. She was able to witness the impact it was having on me in real time, and that year, she gave me two of the most awesome gifts that I've ever received that year for Christmas. She got me the coolest custom-made Xenoblade Chronicles Joy-Cons, and then she made me a custom pair of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 themed Nike Air Force Ones. She's the best. So yeah, you could say that I'm quite fond of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This technically isn't a review, just a reflection of my thoughts and feelings on the game and looking back on them after 2 years. But if I were to give it a score here today, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 would get a 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this type of content, please hit that like button and subscribe if you would like to hear more discussions on gaming and Nintendo. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.